It's 11 minutes past 9 Central Africa time. September is Heritage Month here in South Africa. And it's a beautiful month indeed, right? Because here in South Africa, we have 12, 13 official languages. We have so many, and those are just the official ones. We have so many other sub-languages. We have different cultures, different languages, different dress wear. And we know there's quite a lot of cultural diversity that we really, really do celebrate, right?
And then you get the subcultures within those cultures.
Yeah.
And there's a different expression. And then you get this hybridity that makes it complicated on what heritage actually means. So I'm really interested in this conversation that we're going to have today.
Yeah, absolutely. We're taking a look at how younger generations of South Africans and young people in general all around the world, especially in Africa, which is also very culturally rich, are actually blending these traditional, historical, cultural forms with global modern trends, and they're bringing in new, creative, innovative forms of expression through both culture and modernity. And a term like this is actually called cultural hybridity. We're speaking a little bit about that. Joining us on the line is Fezokuhle Mthonti, who's a cultural commentator, to hang out with us about this. But we'll also be joined by MoAfrika Wa Mokgathi, musician and cultural activist, amongst many other titles. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us. I'm going to start with you, Fezokuhle. Let's speak about culture itself, right? And identity, because it can be so many things at the same time. When we speak about cultural identity, particularly in the African perspective, just how much has this changed and shaped who we are?
Sure, thanks, Palesa. I think there are so many different ways that we can explicate the ideas between ourselves and who we imagine our cultural identities to mean. We know that as a result of colonialism, a lot of our different sensibilities of who we are kind of felt compressed and eroded as a result of that kind of particular imposition. But what we're seeing with young people is that there's not necessarily a return, but there's an attempt to find the archival gaps in the sensibilities of who we are. And so there's consistent attempt to figure out what your language actually means for you. So, for example, I'm a Zulu speaking person. And what I think is really interesting about Zulu and the Zulu language is that if you can kind of chart the history of the Zulu language, you can find out particular things about our ecology, particular things about what the world looked like at particular times. What that lets us know is that people who were Zulu were deeply interested in the way in which their world looked. And so there's been a kind of erasure in the language in a world that is temporarily located through colonial mechanisms. But if we do the work of investigating back and thinking through who and what we were, you can kind of articulate who and what you are now. And I think that's really interesting in terms of thinking about cultural hybridity and people kind of recovering parts of themselves that are implicated through the ancestral making of who they are, in the language, in the systems, in the codings and the beliefs. I think that's really important. And I think that's really important in the way that people are bringing that forth in contemporary understandings of self.
Yeah, I love that you put it that way, because there seems to be an investigation by young people and almost like reflecting who they are, but also wearing a garment of something new in how they translate that research. MoAfrika Wa Mokgathi is also with us, musician and a cultural activist. What's your take on this cultural hybridity? I don't think it's something new. I think it's something that we've also taken from the previous generations, but it seems like it's being more assertive right now in terms of how this generation is transforming it into something that they own for themselves.
Good morning. I'm literally on the move now.
Yeah, we can hear that. Sure.
So I think it's allowing. You know, the term tlogelang sheelang bana ditaola le se ile tsona badimo. It is the true sense of that. That you let go of the reins in every aspect of our culture. And for me, that is to say, allow the culture to evolve, allow the culture to be of the now, and the young people will find ways of how to preserve. They are now, borrowing from the happenings of culture before us, because of much as we are within this particular timeline, we have borrowed from those who have been, and I think we are evolving in certain ways. For instance, what fascinates me is how within the Bapedi culture, you find women traditional women regalia with high heels, and let us allow that. It is the now happenings, and I guess that is the culture evolving, and how they would like to keep, some aesthetic of culture, and it's quite interesting to see, that at some point we were saying a particular group, a group of women who have certain hairstyles, they are not authentic, and then you find the now, explorations when it comes to fashion and preserving that cultural element, where you find women wearing traditional regalia with high heels, or so that's I'm quite fascinated at the moment about such things, and also how women would praise, that I'm wearing a particular mbako, the fabric of that is usually used for the Xhosa women regalia, or even the men with the wraparound. That fascinates me. That now, our Asian counterparts, they are exploring different fabrics. And those who have been, quite purist, if you like, they have tend to be okay with it. So those are some of the things that they are quite interesting as the hybridity evolves, I guess.
Fezokuhle, something that's also quite interesting about this hybridity is that it's not just the hybridity of your own culture, but there's also this sort of intercultural hybridity that's taking place, where you go to someone who is a Tswana person, and you go to their wedding and they're wearing a Xhosa regalia, or they've got a little bit of Nigerian inspiration in the fashion. The hairstyles that we're now doing date back to really pre-colonial hairstyles that we're starting to see coming through in our cultures. Let's also speak a little bit about that after the break. We're going to take a short break and we're going to come back and speak to that, how we've also mixed different cultures and we're celebrating each other's cultures through this cultural hybridity. We'll continue this conversation with Fezokuhle Mthonti and MoAfrika Wa Mokgathi after this.
Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa Tau on the move. AUSISA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institution of South Africa, is a platform uniting Africa's water professionals. This November, Africa leads the conversation on water and sanitation. Join global and African leaders at the AUSISA Africa and Global South Dialogue 2025 from the 9th till the 12th of November at the Emperor's Palace, Johannesburg. From policy innovation, this is where action meets collaboration for a water-secure future. Register today at ausisa-watersan-dialogue.org or follow at AUSISA on social media. AUSISA, working together for sustainable water and sanitation security in Africa. Step into the heart of the day on the move with Palesa and Benjamin.
Hey, we're really celebrating Heritage Month this month here in South Africa. And today we're speaking about something that is so commonplace now in our African continent. It's something called cultural hybridity, which is a mixing and blending of indigenous African cultures and external influences. Just the other day, I was looking at a food blog and someone was hooking up a Lucky Star pasta. And I was like, hi, this is something that I've never seen before, but it was something that I could see that that young chef, African chef, was trying to take what they knew as a staple meal that they ate every single day and take it forward. And that speaks about the hybridity that we are talking about today. And we've got great guests on the line who are helping us on this one. We've got Fezokuhle Mthonti, who's joining us on the line, a cultural historian and arts journalist. And also we have MoAfrika Wa Mokgathi, a musician and cultural activist. Fezokuhle, it's manifesting itself in so many different ways. You know, it's manifesting itself in how Amapiano incorporates Maskandi to our dishes in the new restaurants today, but also the streetwear that you see. But the urbanized environment seems to also have such a huge influence here. It seems like also the new contemporary influences are actually also sparking new inspirations of the old. So it's happening also the other way around. It's not only the history that's interpreting the new, but the new is also interpreting the old.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, as you're speaking about the story about food, I'm reminded of a friend of mine, Taryn de Kock, who's a fantastic food thinker, historian, and also a chef. And she was telling me the story of bobotie, for example. So bobotie is kind of considered South Africans, like heritage dish.
National dish.
Yeah, and some of us are not entirely sure why. This is, I think, what's really interesting about bobotie is that a lot of people don't take seriously that South Africa was a slave port, and particularly Cape Town. And so when folks that were being taken from, West Africa, and particularly in the Congo, the Congolese enslaved people came into the Cape Town port. And there was a chief amongst them. His name was called Babatua, and kind of introduced the first iteration of what we now called bobotie. And that kind of heritage of that food kind of moved and shifted and, turned around. And so I think it's also interesting that we think about migration and that we think about the fact that we're not just people that are stuck in particular moments, right? Like time allows for us to move through space and time. We love different people from across the world. We share different things from across the world. So of course, a hybridity is inevitable. And so like you say, there's also this idea of the past making itself in the present. But in fact, all these ideas have been commonplace. We've always been thinking and borrowing and learning from one another. I mean, I think Maskandi, particularly right now, is moving into the piano space, which is really interesting. It's really interesting to watch kids on TikTok really adopting that and like loving the ways in which new expression of contemporary Zulu young kids in KZN are now like reaching across and kind of moving into what would have been a Pretoria staple, and then that also being global because of influencers like Tyler, but also our incredible, DJs across the world. And so I think there's something to be said about that. I mean, also just speaking about Tyler, what's really interesting is that there's an urban movement across, I'm going to say TikTok, but also the world. And so we're seeing Japanese people dancing in Bacardi.
Yeah.
We're seeing Australian dance groups dancing Ispitori. And it's really fascinating. Of course, they don't have the South African flavor, but there is still that joyous sensibility, and it reminds us of our humanity, that in fact there's a lot more that unites us than divides us. And we see that, I mean, even in some of the most bizarre rhetoric of politics. You think of someone like Donald Trump. Do you know Donald Trump's favorite drink is a turmeric latte? Now, a turmeric latte is not at all an African thing that actually belongs to people from the global south. But what that lets us know is that there's a way in which people are moving in conjunction with one another, always trying to make sense of the worlds in which we occupy. So I think there's always fascinating examples of cultural hybridity all around us.
MoAfrika, let me come back to you, right? Culture in its own is not stagnant. It will continue shifting nonetheless. And even those who consider themselves purists have been able to see how culture has changed even historically. But they would still say to us, you young people don't know who you are anymore. And that sometimes does kind of sting, you know, as a young person who might not be as connected to the traditional aspects of my own culture. It does hurt a little bit to hear someone saying, you don't know who you are. Are we moving closer or further away from our culture as we keep incorporating this hybridity?
We are moving further away, further away.
Oh, no.
I mean, you find pockets of those who want to hold on, but it's indeed that, pockets of those. And so I mean, as a cultural worker, it's somehow like, you know, a self-mandated position to say, no, we can do it, we can continue to preserve. But reality is we are moving further away. And I think what we need to do is to try and find ways of preserving and archiving the timelines, or why is it even important for us to be preserving some of these elements. I think one is the lobola conversation. Should we even, you know, where you find, you know, young women who are very vocal and now with a feminist, you know, approaches and understanding, is that why must I be bored? You know, I don't want lobola. I don't want to be bored. I want the freedom to live as I wish. So some of those, it becomes personalized to whether a person really wants to practice or not. Yeah, but we are moving further away, where you find, you know, SGB in the multiracial schools who don't want to introduce indigenous languages, which will also speak to, you know, the lobola, you know, that will speak to the culture of the people. So if we are moving away from language, we will be definitely moving away from the culture that guides us, you know, in understanding our culture, whether before or now. But yeah, no, you know, the bed is long gone. We only.
And you know what? I think to a large degree, it is also okay, because I think we're not completely letting go. I think nothing actually stays the same under the sun. So at some point, we have to make sure that we keep what we have from the past, but then we move it forward to where we are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all we have time for this morning. I think it's quite an intriguing conversation. We can definitely do with another one of these, but we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much, Fezokuhle and MoAfrika Wa Mokgathi, for joining us in this conversation. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
That's cultural commentator Fezokuhle Mthonti and MoAfrika Wa Mokgathi, who is a musician and cultural activist amongst many other things. Where do you stand in this conversation of cultural hybridity? Do you think we're moving further away from who we are or closer? And you know, what does this mean to you? All this interaction with the old and the new, and you know, making sure that we still are who we are within these new identities. At Channel Africa 1, let's hear your thoughts on this one. Join our live stream. You can comment over there or on our WhatsApp number +27 63406 9126. It's 9:30 Central Africa time. Let's get our latest sports news.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.